Okay, we left off over here on Samachayim and Beis. Just left off over here, about 10 lines up, maybe 12 from the bottom. Marzucher Ravado Saba b'nei Rav Mori bar Yisr. Marzucher Ravado Saba, the sons of Rav Mori, who was the son of Yisr. Polig Nisayu Badi Adodi. They divided their assets between them. It was inheritance, they divided it. Osla coming to Ravashi said he had a question, and when they divided it, it wasn't in the presence of witnesses. Two people purchased something, and now they divide. Omru Leg, they said to Ravashi, Al Pishnai Meidim Omr Achmano. The Torah says that when you have some kind of transaction to establish fact, it's Al Pishnai Meidim. You need two witnesses to establish fact. The boy lemhedel lemotzi hajibo, va'anan lo hadri. Is the Torah saying, if you need evidence that something took place, if you have two witnesses establish fact, what took place, that's only because we're concerned the person actually may want to retract. There was something was established, something happened financially, and then afterwards one of the buyer or the seller wants to back out. So to establish evidence, fact, Torah says, Al Pishnai Meidim, you need two witnesses. Is that what the Torah is saying? We trust one another implicitly, so therefore there's no need for witnesses when we divide. And therefore when we divide it, it's valid what my brother has and what I have. Because we trust one another implicitly, we have no intent to back out. So we don't need proof for what happened. The only way you establish the transaction is only through witnesses, similar to marriage. Just as marriage without witnesses, as we said before, kiddushin, that if you have a marriage without witnesses, as much as we're able to establish fact, let's say, through some other manner, but if witnesses did not see the marriage, it's not a marriage. Identically, witnesses are integral for the transaction to have the value of a transaction. Otherwise, it has no value of transaction. You can only establish the effect of the transaction only if it's witnessed by witnesses. That's the discussion here. Has no value. No, it's not even a gift. It's nothing. It's undivided. Or if a person wants a gift to someone, it has to be in presence of witnesses. Because if I own it and now I want to give it to the other person as a gift, I'm transferring ownership. When you transfer ownership, it has to be done in the presence of witnesses. That's what Torah means when it says Al Pishnai Meidim Yokum Dover. Just as marriage has to be in the presence of witnesses, and it has no value. Not that we're disputing the fact. He gave her the ring, and nobody's disagreeing, but nothing happened. Same thing is, so within a monetary context, nothing happened legally. That was the question they asked Ravashi. Omalu lo ivri sadi el shakri. Regarding monetary matters, the value of witnesses only to verify the fact, so the person should not lie. For the fact of dishonesty, it's purely for the sake of to prevent dishonesty. That's the value of witnesses regarding a monetary situation. Okay, lo ivri sadi ivri from the borei. Hashem only established the need for testimony regarding el shakri, that there should not be sheker. Should not be falsehood. So if two people who trust one another, if I want to gift something to someone else, even though there are no witnesses, even though later may be disputed, but the fact is it's a question. Is it Reuven's or is it Shimon's? Even though the transaction was not witnessed by witnesses. It is witnessed. Not star. You don't not with witnesses. Just tell you if there's a dispute or a question. Correct. The transaction is a transaction independent of the witnesses. No, once he says this applies to every monetary situation. No, there's no question of kiddushin. No question. Kiddushin is definitely l'kaimi. was purely, it was a monetary question. No, it's not. No, it's not. It's not. What does that have to do with marriage? The ramifications. He has a consequence of marriage. He has financial responsibilities. What, he's acquiring his wife in Russia, you know? You buy a pound of pumpernickel, a bottle of vodka, and and you get yourself a wife. It's a package deal. Then they send you off to Siberia. Okay. I understand. Putin considers it all the same. Okay. That's,
but if one of them would then dispute it, they would still...
They would have to bring witnesses to prove that point. Okay. Okay, let's see Tosus over here. Lo ivri sadi el l'shakri. Witnesses were only created, were only established l'shakri. If it's a question of sheker, if it's an issue of dishonesty. One person claims the other person acted dishonestly, so you need witnesses to prove whether the claim is valid or not. Okay, so if a person wants to acquire something financially, one doesn't have to have witnesses based on this Gemara. Let's say a person purchases a piece of property in presence of two witnesses. We say property could be purchased with giving something of monetary value. Okay? And let's say witnesses witness the transaction. Do they have a right to write a document, and the right says in the document, we witnessed Reuven giving Shimon the money, to establish fact that the buyer gave the money and now this is going to be his deed? Do they have a right to do that? So it says kinyan b'fnei shnayim bein tzorch lo miksuvu. It says the kinyan is the presence of two, and one doesn't have to say, instruct them, write the document. The seller doesn't have to instruct the witnesses who witnessed the transaction, say, write the document. La mishum lo mahani b'lo shnayim. So Rabbeinu Tam says, the Gemara doesn't mean to say that you need two witnesses, that the transaction of selling a piece of property has to be witnessed by two. As we said here, any monetary transaction doesn't need witnesses. It's only if there's a question whether it happened or it didn't happen. The vari manafil lo shnayim el hocham kinyan rogel b'fnei shnayim ein tzorach lo maksuvu. Something that's normally done in the presence of two witnesses, to write a document on that transaction, one doesn't have to be instructed to write. Normally a deed, you'd say a deed. Who writes the deed? The seller writes a deed. Let's say the buyer would write a deed. Let's say would write a deed without permission of the seller. It's not a valid deed. Because the deed is a document saying the seller, because it has a whole different ramification. No, it was transferred with money, with witnesses. We gave money, and witnesses witnessed the transfer of the money. And they saw the seller accept the money on behalf of the property. And the seller says, I will only sell this property only if there's no document. And the buyer says, look, I need a document. He says, look, you want to buy it? It's without a document. And the buyer goes and gets the two witnesses and says, look, write the document. It's irrelevant. You know that I bought it. Write the document. Is it a valid deed? It's not a valid deed. The only one who has the right to write a deed is the seller. Okay? So now you have a transaction with money. The seller didn't say, write the deed, didn't write the deed. Do the witnesses have a right to record it in a document form, although they weren't instructed by the seller? So that's what the Gemara says. A kinyan that's done in the presence of two, normally, because it's normally done in the presence of witnesses, that kind of transaction, the seller agrees that the document should be written. That's not that you need Adim to validate the transaction. Any monetary transaction doesn't need witnesses. But what it means over there, kinyan haroi, kinyan harogil b'fnei shnayim ein tzorch lo miksuvu. Aval vadai ein tzorch shnayim. One doesn't need two. So if you give money, the seller receives money from the buyer for a piece of property. No one is present except the two of them. The buyer owns the property. The seller may dispute a claim that the buyer was a thief. That's a separate discussion. So now, somehow the buyer has to prove that he bought the property. The Gemara mentioned, we just had this in last week's parsha, if you redeem Maisa Sheni, what is your own Maisa Sheni, what do you have to do? You have to add a fifth to the value. If a third party redeems it, it's just value. It doesn't have to add the fifth. So the Gemara says, let's say you have two people in a orchard or in a vineyard, and the owner of the vineyard wants to save the fifth. But the buyer, the person who's with him, doesn't have any money. And the owner of the vineyard doesn't have any money with him either. So the Gemara over there says, why doesn't he transfer the money that he has in his house, the coins that he has in his house, to the person who's with him in the vineyard? So the Gemara over there, it's only the two of them in the vineyard. But if there's nobody there, what's the value of the transfer? If you say that any monetary transfer needs witnesses to validate the transfer, so what's the value of the transfer? So again, so what do you see from the Gemara Hazov, the Gemara Bava Metzia, that a monetary transfer has value even if it's not witnessed, right? You see clearly from that Gemara. Why doesn't he transfer the money with a kinyan suder? That's the bartering. So the Gemara answers, he doesn't have the garment. He doesn't have the garment to do the bartering. What the Gemara answer? Very simple. Since it's only the two of them in the vineyard or in the orchard, so therefore it's not possible because a monetary transfer has to be in presence of witnesses. So evidently, so what do you see from the Gemara there? The witnesses is not a problem. Even if there are no witnesses, the transfer is a valid transfer. El Ishmami, the kinyan mahani below edim. That the transaction is a transaction, even though it's not witnessed by witnesses. Chimash perkam the Sanhedrin to komahosam pshora biyochid. Now, the Gemara says that a court, a bezdin, if they're able to encourage mediation, what we call a compromise, it's better than finding one person innocent and guilty. A monetary dispute, and the judges are able to somehow mediate between the claimant and the other person, and they're both agreeable to take more or less, and both of them walk away happy. It's a mitzvah to do it. So it says, what about a yochid? You have a yochid mumche. Normally you have 3 judges. What about if you have a person who's exceptional? He's like a leading Torah sage. He's able to negotiate this himself. He doesn't need 2 other accompanying dayanim to do this. So it says, if he encourages pshora, it says to go pshora biyochid, v'kaimel pshora tzricha kinyon. Pshora needs kinyon. You need a kinyon. But over there, what? Well, again, there's no witnesses. Because what's pshara? Factually, you owe me the money. You owe me the money. And factually, I don't want a release. You've convinced me I should agree to take less, although I'm deserving more. And I know you owe me more. So if the person is agreeable to do a kinyan, to accept the ruling of the dayan, you have the kinyan. But again, there's no mention over there that you need what? That you need witnesses. He could be. He is a bezdin. He is a bezdin. He is a bezdin. It's a psa. Pshora is a bezdin. It says mitzvah lasus pshora. Right? But again, you have to be agreeable. If a court rules pshora and the man didn't agree pshora, it's not a pshora. There's no such thing as pshora. It's not a ruling of a court. It's only for the sake. It's really for the sake of peace. Mediation is really for the sake of peace, that people should walk away happy. That's a kinyan. That's a kinyan. That is the kinyan. That is the kinyan. That's the way they do it today. 2 people come before the court for a bezdin, and they ask the people, do you want din or do you want pshara? That's what the bezdin asks the 2 litigants. What do you want? And they try to encourage them. They should agree to mediation, and there should be a compromise agreement. Even though you're not getting fully what you're claiming, but let's say you'll get 2/3. So if they sign that document, both of them, so then they have to accept the ruling, even though the man's not receiving his full claim. Okay, we'll talk about it. We just had this at the end of Ksubas. Okay. It's for the sake. What do you mean? It's going to for the sake of shalom. It says mitzvah pshara. It says David always made pshara. Always did pshara for the sake of peace. Otherwise, the person who was found who had to pay fully, who he held initially that he was innocent, he's upset. He's upset with the one who took the money from him. Right? And the person's upset at the court. The judges, they actually created their financial loss. They didn't see it the way he wanted them to. So that's it. It doesn't make a difference. That's it says. Aaron was always did pshara. Moshe Rabbeinu never did pshara. Life is not black and white. So as long as you agree to accept the gray, it's valid. It's valid. If you don't accept this, then halach is black and white. Torah is black and white, because that's emes, as you're saying. But when you have emes, most people can't live by emes. They can't. They have difficulty living with that. As a result of that, you try to work out the gray area. But I can only give that kind of ruling if you agree to it. If you not agree, I can't impose that on you, because factually, if you owe the money, you owe the money. So the court can't in any way do something which is victimizing the man who's owed the money. It's interesting. We find there's a psak, famous rush beginning above Mitzvah. The Gemara says the situation where it says above Basra, two people are fighting over a boat. This is a story in the Hamptons. There's a yacht in the harbor, right, in one of the marinas, and each one says the boat is my boat. So the Gemara says, you say, Kol Dolam Gover. You say, let them fight it out, let the best man win. So what, they start slugging it out, the two of them. Right? What are we talking about? Some kind of Irish brawl over here. Two people, Jews, fighting it out. Kol Dolam Gover. So there's a famous rush that in certain situations, so Tosas asks in the beginning of Bamidbar, Shnai Mosim Talis, we say Yachloka, two people are holding onto a talis, they divide. So one, we say Kol Dolam Govar, as you say, by two people fighting over the boat. That's Tosas' question. Well, no, you take the value. You can't divide a garment either. You sell the garment, you divide the value of the garment, right? So divide the value of the boat, right? Say Yachloka, as you say there, Kol Dolam Govar, we should say let the best man win. Let them fight over the garment, and whoever ultimately takes full possession of the garment, that's his garment, as we're saying by the boat. So Tosas explains that when two people are holding a garment, you're in possession of the garment. They can't give a ruling where we're taking away something that you're in possession of. That's called stealing. We can't give a ruling that one is permitted to steal from the other. By the boat, neither is in possession. Two people say, the boat is my boat. Maybe it's neither of your boat. How do we know? Maybe it's a third party's boat. Possession is 100% of the law. If you possess something, it's yours. So if two people are holding, so we know they both cannot both possess it, right? So if that's the case, we don't know who's telling the truth. But as we see it, we see partnership. It's like the equivalent of a partnership, because they're both in possession. Therefore, we say Yachloku. But when neither is in possession, we don't know what to say. So the question is Kol Dolam Gover a psak? Is that a ruling, or is the court walking away from it? Yeah, the question. There's nothing to go on. Wait. I'll tell you what the difference is. If it's a psak means that the Rosh says, of course we could say with certainty, it's like the story with Shlomo Melech with the two women, where he gave the rule, he says, cut the baby in half. So what? The mother said, give the other woman the child. The woman who said, cut the child in half, that means she's not the mother. So he says, the Rosh, that the person who's truly the owner will fight hardest for it. Because even a thief, he will only put himself out to a point where it's worth his while. But otherwise, the true owner, it's like he's not going to forego principle. It's mine. Like the Gemara says, something that's mine, I prefer. It's not a question of monetary value. If it's mine, I want mine. So by the boat, so Kol Dolam Govar is because who's truly the owner, he will fight hardest. So therefore, after he factually takes possession, that is an indication it's his. The others say no, we walk away from it. Kol Dolam, we don't know what to do. Fight it out. So after everything's said and done, whichever one has it doesn't mean it's necessarily his. Because since we know the background, how it came to him, therefore the other one could grab it from him. If one takes possession, the other one. But if you hold, it's a ruling. Kol Dolam, and now he has all of a sudden. Now the other person wants to take it from him. Well, let's say a third party wants to take it from him. It means nothing, because since we know the background on the possession, You took possession, maybe you're not even the owner. Neither of you the owner. Maybe it belongs to a third party. Same thing over here. Pshara is not a psak. Except here, it's a question you forwent your claim. You had a claim. It's like a mechila. I'm willing to forego and to waive a third of what I'm claiming. So once you mochel, right, you forego it, so it's gone. Okay. See, a document, what we call a shtar, you need das mischayev. Whoever a document causes a liability to the one who writes the document. Let's say a borrower. I borrow money, so now I'm a debtor. Let's say the lender would lend money and he has a document written without consulting with the buyer. The borrower doesn't agree to it. The document has no value whatsoever. Of course, having a document that has a certain inherent value that you're able to collect with it. See, really, on a Torah level, the Torah says testimony only has value if it has witnesses. But testimony has to be oral testimony. It cannot be written testimony. So how could any document shouldn't have any value? Of course, the document is signed by witnesses, so it's written testimony. Wait a second. What? I said, but what's a document? So you said it has to meet the criteria of a document. What's a document? So a document is just not a piece of paper. No, it has to be written midas mischayev. Whoever has a liability because of the document, he's the one who has to write the document. So if a man has a deed, who has the liability? That proves that the original owner no longer owns it. So that means he has to be the one to either to authorize the document, because when that document's written, that means he has no claim any longer to his original property. So because it has that level of liability to him, he has to be agreement, and only then is the document considered as if the witnesses are testifying in court. Does not. So it's called the PM Lo Piksovan. It's considered written testimony. It has no value whatsoever. I'll give you an example. So don't buy it. You're right. It's a goodbye, so it's not a sale. Nothing happening. So what the question is, but let's say the buyer wants to buy it, and he says, look, tells the witness, you write the document. He tells the witness, look, you see, it's true, I bought it. Does the document have any value? It has no value whatsoever. I'll give you an example. The Gemara has, let me give you an example. It's Gemara at the end of Ksubis. I mean, David's quoting Ksubis. Just part of the things he quotes here. So the Gemara says, a person tells a person, appoints an agent, I want you to sell 10 acres of property. Okay? On my behalf, you're my agent. He sells 5. So when you say 10, you definitely mean you're authorized to sell 5. Do we say, did he carry out his agency? Because 5 is within 10. And then afterwards, the balance that he didn't sell, he'll sell himself. Or he'll appoint another agent to sell the additional property. So the Gemara says, when a document's written, word goes out on the market. What happens? People say the man has to sell his properties. The moment people get wind that he's selling his properties, what do people say? The man is pressed for cash. So his properties drop in value. So because any document that's witnessed, word goes out in the community that some kind of transaction is taking place. A man is selling his properties. The seller, the one who pointed says, you know something, I don't want too many documents. I wanted 1 document for 10 acres. I don't want 2 documents for 5 and 5. So because it'll cause me a liability, I appointed you to benefit me, not to cause me a liability. Therefore, even the 5 is not considered valid upon me. You failed as the agent on the 5. Even though 5 is within 10, you were not authorized to sell 5 because now 2 documents have to be written. So very often the seller prefers not to have a document. And he could say to the buyer, you know something? You want it? No document. Because I don't want word to get out on the market that I'm selling off my properties. Not that he wants to do anything illegal. The seller doesn't do anything illegal. Because people get word of something, right away they understand in a certain context, and that creates a problem for the seller. Okay? Okay, that's the reason why you need witnesses. Let me explain. Today, any transaction that's done, it's recorded. What's the value of recording? Because it has to do with liens. Before a person buys a piece of property, he wants to know if people have liens on the property. And if they're liens, he buys it at a discounted price. The olden days, unless you had a document with witnesses, the buyer couldn't do his due diligence. If this property, let's say there was a document, so people know, because they're witnesses, word would go out into the community. Let's say there's a difference between a recorded loan and an unrecorded loan. Mil v'alpeh, mil b'shtar, right? A recorded loan you could collect from a property that's sold off. Why? Because the buyer who buys the property, when he does his due diligence, he knows the property is linked to the loan. Because when the loan was done, there were witnesses on the loan. But let's say it was a mil v'alpeh, it was an undocumented loan. How would the buyers of the property, there's no way for them to protect themselves. So therefore the Chacham say if that's the case, undocumented loan, if the property is sold off, you cannot go after that property. So therefore, having a document with witnesses if an IOU, you couldn't collect from properties. Even though you could prove, the man can't say I paid you, because if that's the case, why do I have the IOU? But in terms of collecting from the property once it's sold off, as a lien, as a holder of a lien, you can't go after the property. So therefore, even though it's recorded that you can't deny it, but in terms of a document, the document itself doesn't have the validity of a document. In terms of being able to collect from a property as the one who owns a lien, that not. So I'm just saying, the reasons why a person wants, the person would say to him, write me an IOU, I sold you the property. If he doesn't want word to get out into the market that he sold the property. So therefore it's really between the two of them. He has proof that he bought the property because the man wrote an IOU, I sold you the property. And no, you don't even need witnesses. The way we're concluding now, you don't need witnesses. If you want to have a bona fide start, because sometimes when you buy a property, you want to buy with a guarantee. You want to buy property with a guarantee. That if in fact a lien holder comes and takes the property, you can reimburse me. And it has all kinds of ramifications. What happens if the person who gave him the guarantee doesn't have property? So that means that guarantee liens other properties he sold off. There's a whole trail that's going to be followed over here. So you have to have witnesses. An IOU is not sufficient to give you a guarantee. Because people have to be aware that he gave a guarantee on the property he sold, that if they come back to him, and if properties were sold after that, they lean to that guarantee. So therefore you have to have witnesses. An IOU is not sufficient for that. That's why the buyer wants a guarantee with witnesses on it. It's not only that he'll act dishonestly. Factually, if a lien holder will take the property, I'm coming after you to be reimbursed. And if he doesn't have money to reimburse him, he has no assets, so you go after the properties that he sold off since the time that I bought the property. Ernie, you following us? Okay. Yeah, but once it's concluded, once the deal's a deal, it's recorded. Of course it's recorded. Eventually. We're not doing it during the negotiating state. Once it's concluded, it's recorded. Let's say a person lends a person money and it's not undocumented, right? And you just have an IOU. So the borrower can't deny he borrowed the money. He has an IOU, the lender. But what about, let's say the borrower has no money to repay the loan. What does he do? He's limited. Can't go after, there's no lien. He's not a lien holder. Because the people who purchased the property, since he borrowed that money, have no idea, weren't aware that the land, the property was liened. He has no recourse. No recourse. He can only collect future assets that the man purchases. He can go after those assets. That's all he can do. They're called free assets. They're not sold assets. Sold assets he can't go after. Only the free assets. Sure, you take those. But you don't need liens in the property. You owe money. If you owe money, you have assets you must pay. It's like having money in your pocket. No, not because it's lien. Not because it's lien. Let's say a man just has cash, and the person is a debtor. Does he have to pay the loan? It's not there. It's not because the money in his pocket is liened. If you owe, you must pay. So what difference is it? You pay with cash or you pay with property, or you pay with other movables? The lender. I'm saying if the free properties, I'm so saying if he has assets which weren't sold off, why does the lender have a right to collect those assets? It's not because it's a lien, undocumented loan. It's because you owe me money, and if you have means to repay, you must repay. So he has means, he has assets, so pay with the assets. Whether it's cash, whether it's movables, whether it's land. Yeah, it says, but I have an IOU. You can't deny if you pay the loan. Why am I still in possession of an IOU? Man, I'm not paying. So you go to court. The court will force him to pay. That's all. They'll confiscate the property to cover whatever the debt is. Okay. IOU has no witnesses. Just his signature. I, John Doe, owe so-and-so so much money. That's an IOU. No witnesses. It's interesting. There's a machlokas. Tosas very rarely in Shas brings the Rif. Rabbeinu Alphas. There are a few times he brings Rabbeinu Alphas. Rabbeinu Alphas is the Rif. All the Rambam, most rulings of Rambam based on the Rif, Rabbeinu Alphas. But a few times, and in Shavuos, there's a Tosa brings Rabbeinu Alphas with an IOU. Normally we say, when you come with a documented loan with witnesses, and the borrower says, I paid. So we say, you paid, shtab yotcha my boy. If you paid, so what am I doing with the document? Okay? So is the borrower believed to say parati if the lender is in possession of the document? So if it's a witness document, definitely not. What about if it's just an IOU? It's machlokas, Tosas and the Rabbeinu and the Rif. Why? Because the question is, why when you pay a loan, why do you take back the document? Because the document, if it's witnessed, there's a code. Word gets out in the community that what? That a loan was made. If word's in the community a loan was made, so what happens? His properties are affected by it. Because now people realize they're not going to buy the property unless they have a guarantee. That means his property is going to be sold on a discount. When he takes back the document, word goes out that loan was canceled because the document was destroyed. So if word was in the community, it was a witness document. So to say shtab yotcha my boy, we could say with certainty every borrower wants his document back. But if it's an IOU and no one knows about it, he leaves it. He really, so if that's the case, being possession of document is not an indication that the loan was not paid. The reason why the borrower didn't demand return, it says you could keep this, it's irrelevant. It's just like a piece of pottery. It's a piece of cheres. So that's or do we say that? No, nevertheless, a person always takes the document back. I mean, we rule even by an IOU, a person takes the document back, so therefore if the lender still has the document, it's proof that the loan was not paid. Okay?